Residential schools. Europeans had a major impact on the First Nations. They gave many technologies that grew the First Nations to be more successful. It wasn't always like this. The lifestyle was quite different before the Europeans came to the north. Ways of life and basic things like culture changed because of the ideas of trade and people wanting power. Food depended on what part of Canada you were settled. For my project, I'm focusing on central Canada. Before Europeans came, there was more than enough for food to go around. One bison could feed a tribe for months. A lot of their nutrients also came from berries. This changed once Europeans took over the land. After Europeans came, they killed a huge number of bisons. Many First Nations were dying from starvation or disease like smallpox. For the First Nations, clothing was all natural. They would use fur and hide from animals they hunted and would also wear leather. Bags and belts and special clothing for ceremonies were decorated with shells, cloths, feathers, quillwork, hair, or strips of fur. Later, colored beads were used. Tails of animals like weasels and fox were also used for decoration. Clothing that was worn daily was not decorated, except for a row of beadwork or fringes. They would also dye their clothing with berries, such as blueberries and raspberries. An important accessory that Europeans gave the First Nations were beads. They would use these beads for many things, but a common use was to decorate their clothing with them. As for lifestyle and family, before the arrival of the Europeans, the First Nations could go wherever they wanted to freely. They believed that God put them on the land for a reason and that it was a gift. They were efficient and took care of everyone as if they were all equals. They considered to be one big happy family. They would work together to get jobs done. If there was a problem, they would face it. They created many traditions within their tribes. Men would hunt and women would take care of people. Children would play and learn basic ideas, gradually picking up on the way of life and understanding where they stand in the tribe. Family was extremely important to the First Nations. It was the base to everything. Nothing was more important than that. The goal of the First Nations people was to please the spirit of nature and live to one's life in accordance with the laws of their ancestors, spirits, and surrounding nature. There are many special traditions that the First Nations shared. One that I find interesting is their gatherings. Their gatherings has so much spirit and are very different from my traditions. Powwows are a type of gathering where everyone comes together to celebrate. They do this with music, traditional dancing, and traditional clothing. They would practice the dances outside of the powwow, but they wouldn't wear the clothes every day. Face paint, feathers, fur, wooden beads, hide, etc. would be used to decorate the clothing. Another interesting tradition I found is that they can tell a story with a blanket. Blankets are very meaningful to their culture and it represents birth, culture, life, and death. It can also show their survival and how ideas were passed down through one another. The First Nations believe in the Great Spirit. He was the one that helped them get through hard times and often brought positive nature into a tribe.